Hello, West Africa, and a warm greetings to you, our listeners around the world. You are locked into another electrifying, you've driven, action packed, and very well put together edition of your favorite youth empowerment program, Take the Lead. This is episode 51, coming to you live on West Africa Democracy Radio, the vibrant city of Dakar, Senegal, where we are situated, broadcasting on 94.9 FM. I am your host, Augustine Curley, and today we are opening the floor for a conversation that hits home for millions of young people across our region, the sub-region and beyond. Our topic is bold, it's urgent, and it's very, very real. Combating rural migration, balancing opportunities for young people. And that is mainly focusing on young people living in rural areas within this sub-region. So we want to know, why are the young people leaving rural communities? Why are they leaving their homes? What opportunities are missing for them where they are living from? And most importantly, how do we create solutions that work for youth and by youth themselves? And remember, Take the Lead isn't just on radio. We are wherever you are. Watch us live on YouTube at WADR and join the conversation on Facebook, WADR English Service, and also stream us anytime, anywhere at wadr.org. This is your platform. Drop your thoughts, your questions, and bold opinions in the comment sections. We are reading them live on the radio. So don't stay silent. Your voice matters. According to the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, migration patterns in sub-Saharan Africa are distinct. Unlike in North Africa, where the majority of young people leave the continent to reach Europe, people in sub-Saharan Africa primarily move to neighboring communities, to neighboring countries, or within the region itself. In today's discussion, we will focus on specifically the migration of people from rural areas to urban cities within the West African sub-region. A significant concern relates to the reasons behind youth migrating from rural areas to the urban communities, as well as the challenges they face and the opportunities needed for young people in both rural and urban communities. Together with our guests, this edition aims to explore various strategies to address rural migration and provide practical recommendations for overcoming the challenges faced by these very young people. Well, joining us today are very interesting young people, and they are all pretty informed about what's going on within the sub-region with regards to how young people or their fellow young people are migrating from their home countries to other countries. We have Usma Noreni, and Usma is the Director of Information and Communication Studies at ASER. He will be telling us more about this organization, but it's a privilege, and I'm very honored to have you in our studio today, Usma. Welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you, Augustine. Thank you for having me. And my greetings to all West African Democracy Radio and to our brothers, Roganji. Hope I say well, and Mustafa from Gambia. And it's a pleasure for me to be here.
Well, compliments of the Christmas season.
Thank you, brother.
How do you feel being here today?
I'm a little bit sick, but it's a pleasure for me to be here. And as I said, I will be here. It's a pleasure. And thanks to Usman Toure for introducing me to you. And I've been watching and listening to you, and it's a pleasure to be here. For sure.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here. What's about this organization, ASER?
ASER is the Rural Electrification Senegalese Agency. It is a public agency. Depending on the Ministry of Energy, which is giving electricity power to rural areas. It exists since 1999, and I am the director, and this is giving electricity to, in Senegal we have more than 21,000 villages, and a lot of villages don't have electricity. And our role and our aim is to give universal access to everybody in Senegal, and this is the main goal of us here.
And as a young person working in this agency, how do you feel? You're
Yeah.
representing the young people
Let's
in
say
that
I'm
agency.
older than the director. I'm older than the CEO. The CEO is 30 and I'm 31 now.
Wow.
You see? And the director, Jean-Michel Sen, like to whom I'm sending greetings, is the youngest CEO of Senegal actually in public agencies. And it's a pleasure for me to be back to Senegal because I've been in France for 10 years. And it's a pleasure to come back to help our country and to participate.
Yes, and just saying that means a lot to say about migration. But we also have Roganji Ajiporn. He is a young professional in international management and market strategy. He will tell us whether this name Ajiporn, whether he's from Ghana or from Gabon with the first name. But let's welcome you. How are you doing, Roganji? And I know your middle name is Isaac. I forgot to mention that.
Sure.
How are you doing? And welcome.
Thank you very much. As I said, I will start with gratitude. So I will thank you for the platform, and as he redirected, I want to also insist on it, also to welcome the others on board. So the name is Echampo.
Okay,
And-
Eshampo.
Exactly. And it's basically a Ghanaian name. So my father is a Ghanaian, and my mom is a Gabonese. So the Roganji is from Gabon, and then the Champon is from Ghana.
Which one are you choosing?
Both.
You are
Because
choosing both.
I used all, so
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have you here today.
you very
we
much.
we are really expecting Mustafa Sanko from the Gambia. Mustafa Sanko is a lecturer of migration and border management at MDR in the Gambia. We certainly will have him on the shore today. Not forgetting you, our online followers, whose comments we really anticipate. Tell us more, because some of you, your brothers, your sisters, your aunties, your uncles, your sons and daughters, they migrate, they leave you, and they try to go out there. If not nearby communities or cities, it is somewhat about Europe, Americas, Australia, or Asia. Tell us, what do you think about their movement, and why are they leaving you? Why are they leaving your community? What can we do to ensure that these people also have what they're running for out there? So it's a privilege to welcome you, and please join us. Let's have a wonderful discussion. It is a broad thing, moving from one location to the other, one would say, locating from one community to the other, from one location to the other, in forms of many types of the definitions of migration. But beginning with you, Usman, tell us more about your understanding about young people in rural areas, defining the opportunities that exist there, that differs with what's happening or what exists in urban cities.
Yes, thank you for the question. I mean, sometimes when we talk about migration, we only approach it on a financial, standpoint. We can have different appreciation of it because people move for a lot of reasons. They can move for social, better living conditions. They can move for other reasons. If I take the example of Senegal, and I might think it is the example of other countries in Africa. We have different ways to approach it. First of all, we can have economic way of taking it. We have economic exclusion, and that's something I've been saying a lot because as I work in Azair, like I go to the rural areas of Senegal a lot of times per week and per month, and the first thing I notice is economic exclusion. People don't have, the list in urban cities we have. First of all, because I mean, they all. First of all, economy is largely, let's say, informal. First of all, and they don't have real means. I mean, basic infrastructures. First of all, let's talk about where rural migration is from in Senegal. You see, in 17s and 80s, you had drought, and you have, let's say, structural adjustment policies of IMF and with the World Bank that reduced public investment. And then people have a lot of problems, having agriculture well and having livestocks, that was problematic. So people chose to quit their rural areas to come to the cities. And the second reason might be lack of basic infrastructures, as I said. First, they don't have enough electricity. As I said, in Senegal, we have more than 21,000 villages, and only 8,000 have, electricity. It is more than 5 million Senegalese that don't have electricity. And in these 20, 25 years, if you don't have electricity, you can do nothing. You don't have, sustainable economy. You don't have roads. You don't have connectivity. A lot of problems that pushing people to go and to find better ways to live. Yes.
All right, thank you. Let's hear from Roganji about his own understanding about migration, considering the sub-Saharan region and with the opportunities available, including those that are not available. In this context, how would you describe it?
Okay, so thank you very much. When we talk about, first of all, I want to define the migration. From my understanding, migration is not just thank you very much, Usman, for really opening up to the infrastructure. When we talk about migration, people doesn't chase or doesn't move out because of lack of some amenities. They go out because of lack of incentives. When they try to, see that there is a need or something is really culturally centered in one particular region, they all try to, go for it. So it's basically people trying to chase what they see people or how that particular region that they are moving in is rewarding the need of the people over there. So they have to be inclusive over there. So they don't just go because of the infrastructures. Because you can develop, let me say, the rural areas, but still doesn't have the incentives that will maintain it. Or let me say the reason behind it for them staying. So my migration definition is people chasing after incentives, inclusion. So that is one.
What could be those incentives or those things that really attract them?
They need to belong. They need to have the feeling that they are also being heard. When you go to the urban areas, people are always, trying to, bombard, or let me say, trying to, center everything. All the social activities are there. The presidency are there. The economic infrastructures are there. There are too many, available resources to maintain that. So when people are in their rural areas, they are not chasing after the buildings, but rather they are chasing after how well they can belong. They can also allow their skills to speak for them. Okay. So that is the incentives, yeah.
Great. We'll get back to you. There are a lot to explore from your analysis. But let's hear from Mustafa Sonko in the Gambia. It's good to have you. Mustafa, how are you doing and welcome? Are you getting me, Mustafa?
Thank you so much. I can get you loud and clear. Thank you so much for having me in Lead the Talk. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you are welcome. Just 2 days level of migration dialogue took place in the Gambia, and the Gambia is at a point where young people are in their numbers. Many of them live in the country for whatsoever reasons best known to them. But this recently held dialogue signals a lot in terms of how young people can take advantage of what were being dialogued at this event. From your own perspective, you lectured about migration. Tell us, from the standpoint, your own understanding, what can you say about rural migration and that of urban migration?
Thank you so much. The national dialogue on migration was brought to the Gambia by the International Organization for Migration through the sponsorship of African Union in partnership with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Economic Cooperation of the Gambia people abroad. So this discussion is actually very timely because Gambia is a very youthful population. More than 75% of the population of the Gambia live below the ages of 35. And migration in the Gambia is seen as a rite of passage. A lot of young people in the Gambia believe that migration is the only thing that will bring them economic benefit. Not necessarily that of international migration, but the Gambia is hit hard by the rural urban migration, where young people leave the rural areas in search for better opportunities and other things in the urban area. And this is why in the Greater Banjul area alone, that is the Kanifi municipality, the Banjul, and then the West Coast region comprises more than 70% of the population. West Coast alone comprises more than 40% of the population. So it's densely populated. There is a lot of rural urban migration in the Gambia.
I believe you also form part of this dialogue. What did you hear? And what can you say about issues that were raised regarding the young people who mostly live, if not the North Bank region or the Kanafi municipality or wheresoever areas in the Gambia, running to go to Banjul because they feel that Banjul is the city and they can live a life in Banjul and live in, their livestock and other infrastructures developments that could also help boom the economy through their involvement.
Yes, I think you are absolutely right. You have a lot of young people because many a time the rural urban migration is something that is forgotten in the migration discourse, especially in the Gambia. And this is understandable because you have a lot of young people taking the irregular route to Europe and then a lot of people who are dying, a lot of people who are making. But coming back home, you realize that a lot of young people leave the North Bank region in search of greener pastures. One of it will have to be education. All the universities, nearly all the universities in this country, be it the University of the Gambia, the University of Education, the University of Science and Technology, the University of Civil Service, and then the American International University. All of them are located within the Kanifing municipality. So therefore, that young person who wants to have good education will have to leave the rural areas and then come to the urban areas. That is just number one. All the ministries in the Gambia are located within the GBR. So therefore, the young people will leave the rural areas to come to the urban areas in search of jobs. The other thing is basic amenities, the stadium, the parks. Nearly 80% of them are all located in the urban area. And this forces young people to abandon the rural areas. And some of them, when they come, the circumstantial migration, they don't even go back. The only time they go back is when there is feasts, when there are ceremonies, or during probably Christmas. This is the time you have young people going back to the rural areas. But just to cut it in a nutshell, Banjul is booming, Brikama is booming, and Serekunda is booming. And in order for a young person to be productive, that is the belief, they have to come to the urban area. And this has a lot of consequences in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the road, in terms of water and electricity, because when you have a lot of people congested in one area, it creates problem, criminality, etc.
Okay, thank you. We'll get back to you, Mustafa, but back to you, Usma. The aspect of being one who chooses, no matter what the circumstances you face, would you consider rural migration also somewhat a choice or a necessity, given your experience?
No, migration is never a choice, actually.
Say that again, please.
Yes, I said migration is never a choice. I mean, in these areas, living your rural area, primary area, is not only like going, it is going with the languages you have, quitting your community.
But you willingly living.
I did, because I should have done that. Because I didn't have opportunities I was looking for here. I wanted to have better education, have more opportunities to learn something else. And when I went to France, I learned a lot. And now I'm back because I the choice I had is coming back. It's not going.
So wouldn't you consider that a choice that you made?
No,
or
I was kind of forced to go. Because if I had the same means I had in France, I would not go, because France was not cool to me. I faced a lot of racism there. I chose a lot of hostilities there. It was difficult for me to be, to live in France. It was cold. I was in the eastern of France. It was cold. I'm a Sahelian. So I think it's never a choice. But I just want to
what Mustafa said.
What Mustafa said was very important. what is problematic is that we don't consider urban cities as rural ones. And that is problematic. In Senegal, the amount of investment state is doing in urban areas is huge comparing to rural areas. I mean, let's just take electricity. I mean, people, state used not to invest a lot in rural electricity. Now they have, now they take into consideration the problematic, but before they did not. I mean, since 1960, Senegal has electrified only 8,000 villages. 8,000 villages. I mean, that is problematic. And if we want to achieve the universal access, we will have to electrify 2 times what they did since 1960.
Considering the current population now.
Of course, yes.
Around 18, 19
Of course.
million
And it's
people.
not cool to come to Dakar not having means to survive here. When you take the WADR and you see a lot of people running after the cars, selling stuffs that cannot change their social living. That's really tough. And in rural areas, you have white homes, you have agriculture, opportunities. If state invested there, and that is their primary areas, and it's totally different the way they live in rural areas and the way we live in Dakar or other cities. I mean, I think it's never a choice, and that's where our state lack of vision and lack of perspective and the incentives Gojanji was talking about. I totally agree to that perspective.
Okay, what would you say for you, Roganji, the age limit? Does it really come with age limit before one decides to migrate?
That is a very interesting question. And I would say that being a youth doesn't come with age. You can be 50 but still a youth. You can still be 18 and still be a youth. The main factor is, what are you thinking? What is the mentality? So people are drive through what, as Osman was saying, the environment is the environment that pushes people to think the way they think. When he went to France, you can see that he have come back with certain, new knowledge on how to impact the society. It is the same thing that goes with people that are also in the rural areas without that knowledge, without that skills, without that ideas. They would definitely try to behave the same way that the rural areas are behaving. But if they happen to be in Dakar, the way of thinking, the way of doing things will be different. So that is why I said people move not by age, but they move because they need certain skills and they've not acquired it yet.
Okay, now let's go to the Gambia. Before I asked Mustafa, let's listen to this report where our correspondent Sanduna Mendy visited that 2-day forum on the migration dialogue and engage experts, including young people, regarding the migration flow, especially highlighting why young people are migrating from rural areas to the urban areas.
Across rural communities in the Gambia, young people are now on the move, leaving villages for towns and cities. The internal migration is reshaping families, local economies, and the future of rural life. However, concerns are high about whether it is a matter of choice or a response to limited opportunities. In many rural areas, climate change has made it difficult for some people to earn a living.
Young people leave the villages or the rural areas because you have little opportunities in the rural areas in terms of education, in terms of employment, in terms of basic amenities, in terms of infrastructure. So you don't expect a young person who is born in Bolibana, grew up in Bolibana, have his education at Bolibana, and the person wants to work at a ministry, he will actually move out. The person wants a good life, he will actually come to Combo.
Climate change is real. Among the youth migrants that we see taking this treacherous journey are fishermen. I believe for most of them, they're taking this because their livelihood upon which they have depended on is being threatened by climate change, it's been threatened by rising sea levels, it's been threatened by drought, it's been threatened by dramatic changes in weather patterns. Amongst issues that also has to do with accessing license for fisheries, even the inputs like premixed fuel that goes into powering these fishing jetties to go and fish. It's increasingly becoming an issue. And as a result of this, it's pushing a lot of fisher folk, young men particularly, to go and adopt this treacherous, irregular route as an escape route.
Decision is being drove by many factors. First of all, misinformation. Second of all, lack of opportunities. However, schools are limited, skills training is scarce, jobs outside farming are few. For many, moving to urban centers becomes the only visible path to independence. Rural to urban migration is often described as a personal decision. Here is Mustafa Sonko, an expert in migration.
Many a time migration is not as a result of voluntary mobility. These are involuntary mobility. Left to you alone, you will want to live in the village that you come from. My father left Fonyi to Faraba, and then I stay at Faraba, and then sometimes I have to move to Serekunda because it's not voluntarily. Why? Because I am pushed. There is no work there, I have to live. There is no school there, I have to live. So migration from the rural areas to the urban areas is not done based on voluntary. Voluntary migration has to be a migration where you willingly move to a place because you have your aspirations. But the type of migration that people move from the rural areas is not actually done voluntarily. There are reasons, push factors. People realize that if they want to live in the village, they are going to die in absolute poverty, and therefore they need to move to the town, even though that's not the reality, because the villages are actually absconded. People left the villages, the farms, lands are left in the hands of the old people.
But for many young people, the choice is shaped by necessity rather than preference. The result is a steady drain of young labor from villages, leaving behind aging populations and sowing rural development.
We have a lot of policies, the TVET policies, to make sure that young people are armed with the skills. But what type of skills are they arming these young people? But these policies cannot just be at the offices gathering dust. What is on the paper and what is on the ground is totally different.
As young people leave, communities feel the impact. Farms lack labor. Local initiatives struggle. Families depend on remittance from relatives in town. Experts say rural migration can be managed, not stopped, by investing in rural economies, access to land, credit, skills training, and value addition in agriculture.
Thanks to WADR's Sandona Mendy in Banjul for that report.
Hey people, my name is Mello, Afrobeat singer from Guinea, and I love listening to the program Take the Lead on West Africa Democracy Radio.
Hello, my name is Fatou Bintou Souké. I'm the CEO of African Start Shop, and I love listening to your program Take the Lead on West Africa Democracy Radio.
Welcome back to Take the Lead, your premier youthful platform that sets the agenda for topical discussions all about young people within West Africa and beyond. We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. There is, this interesting aspect of this report that I would love to concentrate on just for a few minutes. And I begin with you, Mustafa, because you have been featured in this particular report. I heard you talking about your father migrating and also pushing you to migrate. There are a lot of things you spoke about. One aspect another person spoke about was the issue of fishing, young people into fishing and, using the ocean to migrate. But tell us more about these challenges you've faced so far coming from the family line. Sometimes people also attribute these things to maybe pressure from the family pushing them, or because they saw their peers doing it or their relatives did it. But you've just had this 2 days of migration dialogue. I believe it is not the first, and it will not be the first dialogue to address these migration trends. What did you take from it, and what have you learned in terms of telling other young people how to proceed in case they decide to migrate from their villages to the urban areas, or if they should not, why they shouldn't?
Well, the migration dialogue context was actually taking a global center stage. And you are absolutely right that migration has something to do with the family. And then in migration studies, this is what we call the social network theory, where migration is done as a result of the family pressure, where people believe that migration is actually meant to maximize profit. So in the Gambia, just like other African countries.
Yeah, Mustafa, are you there? I guess this network.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, you are loud and clear now. Go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you so much. So just to bring you back, I was just trying to say that the two-day national migration dialogue actually brought a lot of stakeholders, but many of the discussions were actually held on the context of global migration. But just to bring you home, with regard to what the young people are actually saying, I absolutely concur with you 110%. Families play a greater role in making sure that young people migrate. And then this is not isolated. If we look at this at a social network theory, we understand that migration becomes self-sustaining through social ties in the Gambia that establish migrant ties networks. You see your age mates in Serekunda, in Brikama. So therefore, new migrants rely on relative friends for housing and job and information. So this is actually something that drives a lot of young people. At the beginning, I told you that migration in the Gambia is seen as a rite of passage, where young people are expected to take care of their families. And then at the villages, you don't have a lot of jobs. So therefore, these young people leave the villages and then come to the town. During the conversation, you could see a lot of young people who come from the rural areas complaining that they lack opportunities in the villages. And where the migration dialogue happened is in the Greater Banjul area. When everything on migration is centralized, many of those discussions happen in the Greater Banjul area, thereby even attracting these young people. And then you could see when we organize the NENCOF, when we organize this youth dialogue, many a time, those dialogues are held in the urban areas. So this in itself is actually contradicting sometimes to what policies want to actually address.
All right, thank you. Usman, what did you take from the report we just played from the Gambia?
I mean, like one of the points stuck in my head is the environment crisis. I mean, we often not talk about it, but the environment crisis is causing a lot of problems to rural areas. I mean, I've seen it. Drought is like coming on a way, and I mean, nothing is done to stop it. You know, I've been to Obaba, which is in the south of Senegal. I've been to, different villages where people are, they are obliged to quit the villages in certain seasons because there's nothing there. There's no, opportunities. I mean, it is warm. It is, there's social conditions.
When you say there's nothing, I mean, aren't there things that these young people can work around?
I mean, they
can they, volunteer through the community initiatives to do things for themselves until the help comes?
They do it. They doing a lot. You have cooperatives, you have social initiatives, a lot of initiatives actually. I've been there, working with GIE, which is like economic interest groups. A lot of women working on transformation. They have a lot of initiatives, but they lack mean. And they can, they cannot do some. They really can't. I mean, and the environment crisis is causing a lot of problem there because what they used to do is actually, affected by climate change, and we don't have public policies to stop it. And that's where state is lacking vision and ambitions about rural areas. And just something I caught from the report. Fishing, for example, is like used to help families in Senegal. A lot of rural areas depend on fishing. And today you have, international, sometimes conventions, international partners, when they come to Senegal and they sometimes doing things on the sea that is cutting every fish around, and people no longer have opportunities to do fishing, normal fishing as they used to do. And what are the people doing? They migrate to Spain, to France, to UK, or they come into Dakar because they no longer do the activities they used to do. I mean, that's what I caught, and it's the same problematics as Gambia in Senegal.
That's right. For you, Raganji, I'm sorry, but let me take you back to Gabon, Senegal, and Ghana. Did you have some time living in Gabon? If so, now you're here in Senegal. Have you also lived for some time in Ghana? comparing the lifestyles of the young people there, because migration cuts across. What would you say about the trend in those countries that you've lived in, including Senegal?
Thank you very much. So, I grew up in Ghana specifically, but I was born in Gabon. I've lived in Gabon for a couple of months. I've been here for almost close to 5 years, which is Senegal. And then I would say that the reason why these are one of the major things that we face every day, especially Ghana. People don't want to, stay in the country. They want to move out because they think that moving out to, let me say, an urban place is really going to give them more money, because it is not that the work is not available. The work is available, but the payment, the income payment is something that really derails the ambition of the youth in that country. Comparing it to Senegal, Senegal people definitely go out, from my perspective, people go out because they also want to come back to invest in the country. And when they see that the resources is not enough, because the natural resources are not enough to, adjust themselves into, they would definitely go out. Comparing to Gabon, there is a lot of resources, but the main thing is the youth are not really strategized on how to use those resources. So moving out is not really a big issue for them. They do it as a choice, but now they go out because of educational purposes, because the education over there, it is not compared to other places.
All right. Now, there is this question, and let me begin with you, Mustafa. Should migration be discouraged, or should the focus be on making it a safe and informed choice?
Thank you so much. And this is very, very important question, because in a lot of migration discourse, people view migration in a very negative perspective, and this is absolutely nonsensical. Migration should be encouraged. Migration is development, because when you remove migration from the development index, you will realize that the development index is going to zero. Even whereas you remove international immigrants in every country, such a country is going to go down in terms of economy. So therefore, migration should be encouraged. Migration should be encouraged. Let me repeat that. When you take a look at the development in Africa, many a time it is the immigrants who develop those places. Even within the Gambia, for example, many a time people who live the rural areas develop the rural areas through migration. But what is problematic here is the large scale of number of people that are living. The problem will come up. How does the problem come up? These are the structural problems that will happen as a result of mass exodus of people who move from the rural areas to urban areas. And therefore, to say whether we discourage it, hell no, we cannot discourage migration. What we need to do is to decentralize development so that the rural areas have at least some of the amenities that they are actually lacking. In terms of electricity, the Gambia is actually doing well. But when it comes to a service delivery, this is where the problem lies. We have offices in the rural areas, but those offices are not as functional as the offices that we have in the urban areas. Just to put the nail on the head, we cannot discourage migration. The government, the private sector needs to actually intervene to make sure that development is actually decentralized, or else people will move. As a migration specialist, I encourage people to move, but orderly and regularly. So in the Gambia, you don't have any right to tell somebody that you are not moving regularly, because you have the right to move everywhere within the Gambia. Thank you.
All right. Great. Now, in another form, perhaps, Usma, you also want to weigh in on that question. But because we are in a digital world right now, there is concern about making use of the opportunities that come with the digital space. This question is about how technology and the digital skills can be used in reducing the flow of rural and urban migration.
Yes, but first of all, I totally agree with Mustafa. Migration should be encouraged because, rural areas and urban areas all are countries and people should have the right to go wherever they want. But it should be, rethink it, from a forced exit to a real choice. I mean, first of all, but technology can help. But before talking about technology, we should talk about education. Education is bringing us the technology. If people are well formed and rural areas redefined and redignified, people, will be having a choice to stay or to go or to return and help. Just take an example. A lot, when you go to rural areas in Senegal, they have initiative, as I said. You have women transforming, etc. And you have a lot of startups that are working to help them, use technology to, to increase the outcomes. Okay. And those women, they're not coming to Dakar because they have, what they should really have as normal Senegalese to stay where they are. States should help startups, initiatives, let's say startups on tech. A lot. I've been working with with startups in Africa when I was in France, and a lot are acting in rural areas. For example, you take the example of Benin. In Benin, you have a startup which is helping rural, economics, transfer the ananas, the pineapples from, the rural, let's say, market to international market, and those people are connected, to people who are in Japan, in Chinese, or in France. And that helped them sell their products. But if it is just used on a very lower, standpoint, those people cannot sell it, and they're not having the chance to change their social livings. Just an example I want to give about Azere where I work. In Ubaba, for example, they don't want fishy products, and they don't have any technical, support to conservatives. So what they do is more than 15% of the cultures is thrown away. And what we are doing is we are helping them having some, some let's say, technologies that will help them, conserve their products. The 15% they used to throw away is now used as an outcome. And that is helping young boys, young girls, and women, and everybody to stay there and work. And this is, I think, very good problematic states should be handling.
Well, before we go to the maybe recommendations, let's hear from you as well, Rukanji, regarding technology, regarding the issue of educating young people about migration.
Okay, so technology is something that is really, we are living in an AI environment now, and as time goes on, it's going to increase. So it is the need for the government, for private institutions to even try as much as possible to advocate, or let me say publicate that, so that people will also get access to technologies. Because the more technology advances, the more the youth try to involve themselves into things that are going on in the urban places as well.
Okay. Climate change is also an issue right now. What would you say about the impact of climate change? Does it play a role in having these young people leaving rural areas to urban areas?
Okay, that is very interesting. But I think that I will really talk about it when it's in the recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I will really insist on it on the recommendation. But
Great.
I think in as much as that, climate change is really playing a role that is derailing the factors of the development of the country. And it's one of the major factors of
Within the sector of the youthful population, who are mostly affected by these wave of migration from rural to urban? Is it the young girls, or is it the disabled youth? Who are mostly affected? Before I go to others, let's begin with you. Do you think are mostly affected?
Okay, to my opinion, I would say everybody is affected. Yeah.
In what sense?
Okay, so when we talk about disability, as you said, we will say that, as I made mention when I was trying to make a point, that youthful age does not start with age. It starts with a mindset. So disability just begin when you are not thinking straight and you are not thinking right. There are a lot of people that are in the rural areas that do not even know what to do with their lives. And that is also one thing that is really affecting the youth right now. So one of the main things that we are supposed to focus on is that one. Yeah.
All right, great. Now, who are those responsible to ensure the opportunities that the young people see out there for which they are leaving their communities are provided just right in their communities, in their villages. And we begin with you, Mustafa. I know you have perhaps listed a lot of them, and maybe through your own initiative or through your educational venture, you are also providing them to these young people that you lecture at somewhat at school levels or at university levels. Who are those responsible to provide the opportunities? What are the opportunities that these young people need that they shouldn't leave their communities or their villages?
Thank you so much. A very relevant question, yet topical question in migration. So I work as a migration lecturer at a civil service university, but aside that, my full-time work is migration officer at the National Youth Council. And part of my responsibilities is to talk to young people about migration, the dangers of irregular migration, as well as the opportunities that we have in this country. Because when you discourage irregular migration, you need to tell these young people why you are discouraging irregular migration, and when they stay in this country, what is in for them. I just want to draw you back with regard to some of those opportunities. But the duty bearers in this aspect is the government. The government is actually responsible for making sure that development is decentralized. Opportunities of job are created. Schools are found everywhere. In terms of TVET, the Gambia government through the Ministry of Youth, the Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology is building universities to make sure that the young people are equipped with the skill. But the ministry that I work with, that is the Ministry of Youth and Sport, is also rolling out initiatives that are expected to actually help the young people. The NYSS have a graduate scheme where they put young people in the apprenticeship program, put young people into offices for internship for 1 year, so that this will enable those young people to grab jobs upon their completion of their internship, because everywhere you go, you want to work, they ask the young people whether they have experience. But none of those institutions, sadly, are willing to give them the chance so that they can have those experiences. The National Enterprise Development Initiative, which is also under the Ministry of Youth and Sport, is training young people back through the funding from the UNDP and then the Japanese government. We were able to train 400 young people in West Coast and then LRR on horticulture and business entrepreneurship. But to answer your question, it is the government of any country that is responsible for either creating job or creating the available good environment so that these young people can actually thrive.
Okay.
I actually agree with Osman with that. Yeah, thank you
So what are your recommendations as we take leave of you, Mustafa? Indeed, it's been a pleasure, and we really appreciate your level of analysis on the issue. What are your recommendations?
Thank you so much. So the issue of migration, be it the internal migration or the international migration, it need a concerted effort, intra and interagency cooperation. In the Gambia, we have the National Coordinating Mechanism of Migration, which is actually crafted from the Global Compact for Safe and Orderly Migration, to make sure that all the ministries work together to ensure that migration is done orderly and regularly, even within the same country. So therefore, the government, the private sector need to understand that issues of migration are actually very important, and if not managed, it will lead to very dangerous consequences where you have overcrowdedness. So therefore, development should be decentralized. The people need to be armed with technology. I agree with Osman. Technology is very important. Young people need to be given that environment in the fishing industry, make finance available to them, because if you give them finance loan, young people cannot access this finance. Make it seamless for these young people. Okay. Empower our young people. We cannot continue to blame our colonial masters for our failures.
Fantastic. Now, to you, Usman, as you try to list maybe opportunities that you think young people can rely on and not considering migrating, what are your recommendations?
I mean, it's not because I'm the director of communication of Azare that I'm saying it, but I think electricity is the first thing states should ensure the people. I mean, having universal access to electricity is going to be leading to everything else.
Okay.
Because without electricity, you don't have primary schools, you don't have universities, you don't have roads, you don't have basic infrastructures. That's the reason why in Azel we think electricity is not just giving light, but electricity is also, economic, social, and political, public policies. That's the reason why our activities on a daily basis is to help people with electricity have economic outcomes. That's the first thing state should do.
Okay.
But the second of all, what we should say is that rural youth should not be just spectators. They should be actors also, because everything that is done for you, without you, is sometimes done against you. So they should be, participating into creating opportunities for themselves, because they know what what they need. And to finish, in Senegal, only 4% of agricultures own their land. So the problem is people don't own their lands, and you have private initiatives sometimes that are, that are not helping them, and sometimes that are embezzling their lands.
Okay.
So states should engage land reformers to help everybody own their land. So if they own their land, they can go to the bank and transform, the legal papers they have into money and to invest in their social conditions. And to finish, education is also as important as electricity. I've seen people working 16 kilometers to go to primary school. And when they do it one time, they're not doing it a second of a time, because that's hard for people to walk 15 kilometers to go to a primary school. And that's the reason why people, they can go 1 year, but the second year they're not going because it's hard. So states should invest a lot of money to rural areas into education and to help people being educated and being dignified. And if they are educated and dignified, therefore, they can stay there and have their own initiatives and perspectives.
That's so wonderful. Now, to you, Roganji, what are your recommendations?
Okay, so for my recommendation, I would say that the rural areas should not try to be like the urban areas. The rural areas should try as much as possible to identify their own niche.
Okay.
If it is agriculture, go in for agriculture. It shouldn't be always, I want to specifically use Dakar as an example because I'm here.
Yeah. Dakar
should not only be producing agriculture, it should not supposed to be producing infrastructure. Jaminajo can be, how do you call it? Be more good in, let me say, infrastructure, or let me say, company services. Cheers can have farming. And then when it's like that, people that are really interested in those areas can now migrate. That is where the trans-migration will really happen.
Yeah.
Because when this thing is going on here...
Decentralized services.
Exactly. When people come in the country, they will say, I have to go to Cheers because that is where farming is. I have to be in Dakar because that is where maybe education is. So that when people migrate, it is not to search or to seek for something, but to seek, or let me say, run towards their skills and their purpose. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, it's been a pleasure having you here, Roganji, and I hope that you come back here another time, hopefully next year, for another topical discussion like this. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mustafa, thanks so kindly. We consider you our migration expert, especially on the Youth Hour here. We will keep in touch with you, and hopefully we will host you next year. I wish you all the best. Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year to you, Mustafa.
Thank you so much. Rest assured, I will be cooperating. It's a pleasure speaking to you again. My regards to all of you in the Dakar studio.
And indeed, Utsma, thanks for coming, our energy expert.
Thank you, brother Augustine. Thanks to Aganji and to Mustafa for the talk. And it will be a pleasure for me to invite you, West African Democracy Radio to travel with us into rural areas.
Indeed.
We have a lot of travel to do in January.
Yeah.
I will be sending,
the
invitations, and that will be a pleasure for us to invite you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the job.
Well, listeners and viewers, this is where we conclude the 51st episode of Take the Lead here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting all the way from Dakar, Senegal. We are sincerely grateful to you for being with us today. Please join us next Friday for another live episode of the program. Remember to take the lead in shaping the discourse for the betterment of young people in Africa. I am Augustine Curley, wishing you Merry Christmas.
We thank you for listening to this program in Nigeria on Darling FM 107.3 Owerri, Southeast. We thank our listeners in Liberia on Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Nufa County, Kwakete Radio 100.9 FM, Bargan, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riversess. In Sierra Leone, we thank our listeners on African Young Voices, Freetown, Radio Bath 91.3 FM, Eastern Community Radio FM 101.9 Kenema. In Ghana, Radio Pod, Savannah Region, Reals FM 104.7 Wenchi. In the Gambia, on Numi FM 94.0 North Bank Region. Radio Veritas 102.9 FM The Gambia.
WADR. You can listen to us on 94.9 FM in Dakar through our website.